kind of tucked him under her wing, and she taught him how to dress properly and made sure he bathed and did all those things that a child needs to do, and got him involved with Rotary and with us. It's very interesting to see how people's lives change. And in that year that Josh was over in Belgium, he changed from being a smart but child without any direction to somebody with very much with a direction. Graduated with honors at University of Texas in Austin. Was the freshman counselor, by the way, which is a big deal if you go to UT. If you're the freshman counselor for kids coming in as a sophomore, you did good during your freshman year. And he's gone on, he's living a great life in Fort Worth, and I like to think that Rotary had a lot to do with that. Now, we would have never met him. I would have never met him had I not been in the Rotary Club. That same class of students, we had another Raleigh student, and Sherry and I went to pick her up. She lived with her mother, her father, her grandmother, and 7 children in a 2-bedroom apartment. And she had a great family, but they were poor. You know, the family was wonderful. They didn't have any money. So, and it was kind of interesting. She was very young for a junior in high school. She was still 16 when we took her to Raleigh. Looked like a little short 16-year-old Hispanic Sandra Bullock. She was cute as could be. And we drove around out to Raleigh, and we got to know her a little bit. Just like any other trip, when you take them out, they're real quiet and real scared. When you bring them home, they're all excited for the first half, and then they sleep for the second half. But we got to know her during that trip. And when her high school year started, I got a call from her, and she said, you know, I'm doing this Decker marketing class. I said, yeah, a lot of your school does that. And she said, well, I need a job. Well, I learned that she wanted to be an architect as her career. So I said, well, what do you want to do? She said, I don't know. I said, well, let me give you a job with some architects. And I found a couple of good architects to match her up with, and they mentored her and put her to work, and she was sharp enough that she brought a lot of value to their firm as well. It was a great match. And during her senior year, I knew if she was going to go to college that she wanted to do, she was going to need some help. So I kept in touch. And I'd encourage her and mentor and get her to, you know, send out some applications for scholarships and things like that, because her parents couldn't afford it. And that was the only way she was going to get to go to school. And that spring, she and her mother came into our shop, and she had 2 tickets in her little hand. She was a little short thing. She says, would you and Sherry come to my high school graduation? Well, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. We showed up out at Lakeview Baptist Church. Huge auditorium there, it holds thousands. We didn't know a soul. We were sitting kind of up in the back, just looking forward to seeing Jessica graduate. But her father hunted us out in that crowd, and they saved us seats on honor with the family. She graduated with honors from her high school class. We got her $14,000 in scholarships to go to UT Arlington. That's a mighty comfortable full ride at UTA. At the end of her 3rd year, she came to our Rotary Club again, one of those Raleigh areas that shows up unannounced and needed some money, and told us that if we could help her go to Rome for a summer, she could graduate architecture in 4 years instead of the usual 5. Architecture is 177 hours to graduate instead of the usual 120-something to graduate in college. So it's a 5-year course, but that she could get through it in 4 if she went to Rome. So we helped her do that. And sure enough, at the end of her 4th year, she came in and handed me her graduation announcement for her Bachelor's of Fine Arts, UTA. I kind of lost touch of her. And then 2 years later, I came into the shop, and there's a little envelope in my slot. And it said that Jessica Balderas, University of Texas Arlington, is proud to announce that Jessica Balderas has received her master's degree in fine architecture. First of her family ever to go to college. And I got to know her just because I showed up at our Rotary meeting. Bill's seen these pictures probably 10 times for myself and other people showing them, but I'll tell you the whole story behind them. Warren Bain was our international service chair. I talked him into being the international service chair for me when I was governor. He didn't want to do it, but he did it. And he came over to our club to talk about wheelchairs, the Wheelchair Foundation. And I think it's a good thing. I like it. It's not a Rotary program, but it's something Rotarians do very well. It's something I believe in. It's one of my charities. And he said, you know, Pete, I'm going to talk about the wheelchairs. I said, yeah, I know, Orrin. That's why, you know, that's what it said in the bulletin. And he said, well, you know, at the end of the program, I'm going to ask for some money from the club to help support this. I said, well, you know, fine. You know, I expected that. Then he looked me square in the eye and he said, you know, I found that if I get somebody of standing in the club to jump up and start the giving, he says, that gets everybody else to give it. He says, you'll do that for me, won't you? Gave him a look. And I thought, oh, man, you know, there's times, people know me, know that there's times when I have a little money and there's times when I don't have much, and I was kind of feeling the pinch at that time. But I agree. And Orrin gave his presentation, and it was a wonderful presentation. He really did a good job. Chevron Texaco had a double match with the Wheelchair Foundation, and for $37.50 you can get a wheelchair shipped to Angola, where we were sending them. So I wrote him a check for 10 wheelchairs, and he got done, and I jumped up and I said, Orrin, I'll take some of those wheelchairs. Well, I knew Orrin was going to Angola to deliver these wheelchairs, so before I handed him the check, I said, Orrin, I said, you are going to Angola to deliver these, aren't you? And he said, yeah, I am. I said, I'll give you this check if you promise to deliver one special for me. And Orrin said, I will. I gave him the check, and the rest of the club did pretty good. They all joined in, and we bought a number of wheelchairs to go over there. Well, Orrin went off to Angola, and he came back, came right over to my shop. He didn't work far from me, and he gave me a CD full of pictures. And he said, I gave away your wheelchair. This was the first day he was back. He was excited to tell me about this. I said, well, tell me about it. He said, well, we got over there. He says, Angola is a nasty place. He said, man, these people need help. I said, I'm glad I went, but it was probably the dirtiest, nastiest place I've ever been. He said, I'll tell you what, I'd go back tomorrow if they asked me to go. I said, well, tell me about the wheelchair. He said, well, when we got there, he said, we were at the capital city, but the container load of chairs needed to go to another town. So as he put it, they stole 10 chairs out of the container and put it in their van, and off they drove. And they were driving down the main street of the road, and Orrin said, stop the van. And they stopped the van, and Orrin was sitting up front. He got out his camera, and he's a real good photographer. He started taking pictures. And out in front of him, go ahead and hit it, Bill, was this guy crawling out from the curb. You can see he's got boards under his hands and knee pads on his knees. He's got inner tubes wrapped around his feet to keep from wearing off the top of his feet. That's the way this man's been getting around his whole life. And Orrin kept snapping pictures. Oh yeah. The guy crawls across the street, gets to the far side. He had trouble getting his withered legs up over the curb. And Orrin pulled around. He says, hey, buddy, he says, how about a wheelchair? He crawled over these steps and sat down. A crowd gathered around. He set those boards down for the last time in his life and took those inner tubes off his feet. They sat him in that wheelchair. That's my wheelchair. Things happen when you show up at a Rotary meeting. Things that mean the world to me. And you know, I could tell stories for days, I think, on the things that touched my life and meant something to me. The gifts I've got